Good morning, class 10 students. I welcome you all on this online platform provided by Jagriti Classes. We were doing our chapter 6 and we'll be continuing that chapter that was about life processes. So this is for class 10th and we are doing chapter 6, life processes. In the introductory video, we have already discussed what do you mean by life processes, then what is the significance, that is importance of these life processes. These life processes are a marking discrimination between living and non-living species. So in the next video then we further dealt with nutrition, the different types of nutrition, what do you mean by nutrition, different types of nutrition in plants and animals. So now we'll be starting photosynthesis. I know the topic photosynthesis we have already done, but some of the points which were left, or we'll give a quick recap to what we learned. Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants, remember photosynthesis occurs in green plants. So photosynthesis is the process by which green plants synthesize their own food. Okay, green plants synthesize their own food in the presence of sunlight. What are the raw materials which you require for photosynthesis? Yes, the raw materials are carbon dioxide and water. And these carbon dioxide and water in the presence of, well, let's write the equation of photosynthesis. And I am now writing directly the balanced one. 6 carbon dioxide molecules combining with 6 water molecules in the presence of sunlight and in the presence of chlorophyll. So we say that only green plants perform photosynthesis because they have the presence of chlorophyll in them. That is your green pigment. It combines and forms a glucose or a carbohydrate molecule. Okay, and then you get the byproduct, that is 6 molecules of oxygen, which are in turn released out, and this oxygen we humans and other animals and other living organisms use for our life processes, that is respiration. So this is the equation of photosynthesis which you have with you. Now talking about the steps which are involved, this we are just revising again. Okay, the first step is, what is the function of chlorophyll? Why do we say that only green plants can perform photosynthesis, or what is the requirement of chlorophyll? If I ask you, can any one of you answer? Okay, very good to the students who have answered it correctly. Now the answer, that is the requirement of chlorophyll, is this chlorophyll is responsible for absorbing or trapping the sunlight. So we say that the first step in photosynthesis is the absorption or trapping of sunlight by chlorophyll. So this would be your first step. Then the next is, not you, because we do not perform photosynthesis, after these green plants having chlorophyll, they trap the sunlight. What's next? Then the next is reduction of, okay, this would be your third step. The second would be, this sunlight is useful for splitting your water molecules. And from where do you get water? Where do the plants get water? They get it from the soil. So, splitting of water molecules. Splitting of water molecules in the presence of sunlight. That is, this sunlight which is being absorbed by the plants in the presence of sunlight, and therefore because you are breaking water molecule in the presence of any light, here which we have sunlight, this process is called photolysis. Because lysis means breaking down, photo means in the presence of light. So breaking of water molecules in the presence of sunlight, photolysis occurs. And the next is reduction of your carbon dioxide into respective carbohydrates, that is your plant food. You can also call it a sugar, a complex sugar moiety. So reduction of CO2 into carbohydrate. Now can any one of you tell, I am telling that this photosynthesis, you know that it is a chemical reaction. We have dealt with different kinds of chemical reaction in chapter 1. So this photosynthesis is which type of reaction? Is it a displacement reaction? Is it a combination reaction, a double displacement reaction, or you have this to be a redox reaction? Which kind of reaction is photosynthesis? So this I'll tell you that photosynthesis is a kind of redox reaction. Redox means in this process, reduction and oxidation process occurs simultaneously. And if you do not know about redox, then you can watch my earlier video lectures where we discussed about different types of reactions and where we discussed what do you mean by reduction and oxidation. So redox reaction is basically when two processes, that is one reduction and one oxidation, occur simultaneously. So this is a kind of redox reaction. Now if you are watching my videos from starting, can you tell me in this reaction which compound is being reduced and which is oxidized? Please think over this and tell me. Okay, now I'll tell you that this CO2 is being reduced to carbohydrate. Okay, here you have reduction and the water molecule gets oxidized. So see, this CO2 which didn't had hydrogen first, it converted into carbohydrate, and you know addition of hydrogen to any substance is reduction. And here this H2O, it had H and O, hydrogen and oxygen, but here it only has an oxygen component. This means this hydrogen is being removed, and we know removal of hydrogen is oxidation. So here water is oxidized and this CO2 is reduced. Therefore this third point is correct, that is reduction of CO2 into carbohydrates. You can also, you could have also told me from this point that which is what is reduced. Here it is written directly, that is reduction of CO2. So this was an important concept which you should know, that reduction of CO2 occurs and oxidation of water in the form of oxygen occurs. And you can also say that what kind of energy change occurs in photosynthesis. Can you name the type of energy, that is which form of energy is converting into the other kind of energy? You can say that the energy source here is what? The ultimate energy source for our universe is the sun. And for photosynthesis also, this sunlight acts as your energy source. And this sunlight, that is your light energy. So, what is the energy conversion here? We say that this light energy, because you know the first step of photosynthesis is absorption of light. If light would not be there, no photosynthesis can occur. Okay, so this is the reason why photosynthesis occurs only in daytime, because the first step involves the absorption of light, and if you do not have any kind of light source, no photosynthesis will occur, because no sunlight or no light would be present and nothing can be absorbed by chlorophyll. So we say that the energy conversion taking place during the process of photosynthesis is the conversion of light energy into what kind of energy? Heat energy? No, because no kind of heat is releasing out. This sunlight is being absorbed, then you break your water molecule and finally you get the plant food carbohydrate. And this you know is a chemical species, chemical substance. So you say that light energy is ultimately converting to chemical energy. So this is the energy conversion involved in photosynthesis process. I hope everything is clear enough, because we have already discussed the rest part of photosynthesis in our previous video also. So now moving further, what you have next, now we'll deal with a short topic, stomata. What are stomata? I hope you have learned something or other about stomata in your previous classes. Stomata are the minute holes, or you can say small pores present in leaf epidermis. Now here comes a new word, leaf epidermis. So we have different parts. If you try and observe, you take a very thin peel. Let's suppose you have a leaf with you. Now remove a very thin fine peel from the surface of the leaf. So the surface of the leaf, that is the outermost covering, is known as epidermis. You can also say that epidermis is the skin of leaf. Like we humans and other animals have a skin all over our body surface. And this is also a general knowledge question, that which is the largest organ if you are asked, then the largest organ would be skin, because skin covers our body from head to toe. Okay, so remember, skin is the largest organ. Sometimes the students get confused that largest organ is liver. No, liver is the largest gland present in the body. Skin is your largest organ because it covers all your body. And this liver, which you frequently answer mistakenly, is the largest gland. Okay? So this is a general question. Now we have that parts of leaf. We have the stomata is the small pores or holes which are present in leaf epidermis. Leaf epidermis, I have told you, take a leaf, pull out a very thin peel from the leaf. Okay? If you try to do this activity, you will get a very thin, transparent peel of the leaf. So this would be your leaf epidermis. And in simpler terms, if I say, it is the skin of your leaf. So we have two leaf epidermis, that is the upper and lower. Epidermis present on the upper surface is upper epidermis. If you take out epidermis from the lower, it would be lower epidermis. And if you observe this epidermis in a microscope, then what you observe is, in the epidermal cells, in between the epidermal cells, you have some kidney-shaped cells. Okay? So these kidney-shaped cells present in these are your epidermal cells. And a diagram is even made in your books. That is, upper epidermis is made. Then here, at the downside, you have a lower epidermis. And between upper and lower epidermis, you have many kidney-shaped cells, that is your stomata. And other, you have some vacant spaces. So this is a rough sketch of stomata. Not stomata, that is the location of stomata in your leaf. Okay? Now we'll deal with stomata. So the next point would be, these stomata are kidney-shaped structures, or you can also refer to them as bean-shaped. So these are bean-shaped structures which are found in your epidermis. The next point would be their diagram. Okay? These stomata, they contain, I am telling you their structural features. That is, which kind of structure do these stomata have? So they contain two guard cells surrounded by a group of cells which are called, surrounded by a group of special cells which are called subsidiary cells. Subsidiary cells. Guard cells, these are again the bean-shaped or kidney-shaped structural cells present in your stomata. Then what you have is, between the guard cells, or you can write, these guard cells enclose a pore or a cavity in between them, and this cavity is called the stomatal pore. Guard cells enclose a cavity within them known as stomatal pore. Okay, this we are dealing the structure of stomata in detail. These are the structural features of stomata. So these stomata are kidney shaped or bean shaped structures. They are found in the leaf epidermis, that is the leaf skin. They have two guard cells, your kidney shaped cells. These are called as guard cells. And then you have a group of cells surrounding these guard cells. These flower petal like structure, okay? This kind of cells. These are called subsidiary cells. Then next you have that these guard cells have a space in between them, this cavity. So this middle cavity is called your stomatal pore. And one more thing you can write, that in these guard cells you have the presence of chloroplast. The next point would be guard cells contain, GC stands for guard cells. So guard cell contain chloroplast in them. And chloroplast I have already discussed. The site for photosynthesis, it is a kind of plastid which contains green pigment, chlorophyll in them. Now drawing the structure of stomata. So this would be a rough sketch of stomata, and you can also see the structure of stomata in your books. It is very neatly and very nice structure is given in your NCERT textbooks. So this is what stomata somewhat looks like. These two cells are your guard cells, okay? These are the guard cells. Then these guard cell enclose a pore, and this pore is called stomatal pore. Then next you have these cells which surround the guard cells. These are called subsidiary cells. So this is a diagram of stomata. Now what we have next is stomata is responsible, or the functions of stomata I can say. Now we are dealing with functions of stomata. So there are two major functions which a stomata can perform. The first function is it helps in gaseous exchange, because a plant needs to do gaseous exchange, that is during respiration and photosynthesis in the plants. So this stomata is responsible for gaseous exchange in plants. Gaseous exchange means exchange of gases, that is between CO2 and O2. You know that during daytime the plant requires to do photosynthesis to prepare its food. Then during the daytime what this stomata do is, this stomata opens up, okay? There are even two diagrams given in your books about the open and the closed stomata. That is during daytime. If you talk about daytime, when you have the photosynthesis process going on, then the stomata remains in open condition. But during the night, when no kind of photosynthesis is seen, the stomata remains in a closed position. What do you mean by open and closed stomata? Open means that during the daytime these guard cells swell up, okay? Whenever these guard cells will swell up, these are your guard cells, okay? Whenever in the daytime they get swell up, then they get far away from each other, and as a result the pore opens. So when these guard cells swell up, they move far away from each other and an open pore is observed. That is, the structure is similar to this. Okay, the subsidiary cells are similar that they were originally present. So because of the swelling, the pore opens. So this is called the open condition of stomata. Why does the stomata open? What makes the guard cells to swell up and move away from each other? That is the entry of water from this subsidiary cells to the guard cells make them to swell up, and then the stomata opens ultimately. So when your water molecule, that is when the concentration of water is more in your subsidiary cells compared to guard cells, then your stomata would open. But in the night time, the concentration of water present in the guard cells is very high as compared to subsidiary cells. And you know, by the process of osmosis, water moves from its higher concentration to lower concentration. As a result, water will move from these guard cells to the subsidiary cells, and as a result, these guard cells will shrink up, and hence they would close the stomatal pore. So, the diagram representing closed stomata would be, these are your shrinked up guard cells and these are your subsidiary cells. So, when does the stomata close? During night. You can write this in a flow chart. During night, water concentration is high in your guard cells and you have low concentration of water in subsidiary cells. As a result, water moves out from the guard cells to the subsidiary cells. Hence, water moves from guard cells into subsidiary cells. And as a result, when these guard cells lose their water, then guard cells get shrinked up. Okay? These guard cells shrinks up and as a result, stomata gets closed. But during the daytime, you have higher concentration of water in the subsidiary cells compared to the guard cells. So this water will move from subsidiary cells to guard cells and as a result, the stomata will open. So this, and if the stomata opens, then easily the gaseous exchange can occur. That is, the gases CO2 is required during photosynthesis. So in the daytime when stomata will open, CO2 gas will move inside this stomata and as a result of photosynthesis, oxygen which is produced, this oxygen will move out through this stomata only. So hence we can say that stomata helps in gaseous exchange. Then the next point is what? Then the next point is, this stomata also helps to carry out the process of transpiration. Now what is this term, transpiration? Let's discuss it. Transpiration. Transpiration, it is the process of removal or loss of water, from stomata present in the leaf epidermis. You know, from stomata present in the leaves, this you have the process of transpiration. I hope you have observed the process of transpiration. Loss of water in the form of vapors from stomata, from the stomata present in your leaf epidermis is called transpiration. So stomata serves two functions. First one is the process, that is gaseous exchange, and the next one is to facilitate the process of transpiration. So this was whole account of stomata. Now one thing more which we'll discuss would be heterotrophic nutrition or nutrition in amoeba. So the next topic would be nutrition in amoeba. Okay, this topic is again given in a detailed paragraph in your book. So how does amoeba gains its nutrition? So you know, amoeba does not have any fixed shape. Let us consider this is our amoeba. Now, whenever amoeba encounters a food particle near itself, this is the food particle, then this amoeba will move towards the food particle to engulf it, to take this particle in, and this amoeba, after moving to a certain distance, it forms a false feet-like structure which is called pseudopodia. So the next situation would be what? This amoeba will move towards the food particle and this would form a similar structure. That is, this structure of amoeba is called pseudopodia. This pseudopodia is also called false feet. False feet. Pseudo means false and podia means feet required for locomotion. So pseudopodia will become your false feet because this amoeba wants to entrap or absorb this food particle to get it inside its body. Now the next condition would be what? This food particle, this pseudopodia would be elongated and hence it would cover up the whole food particle and this food particle will be pushed inside to the body of amoeba. So the next condition is this food particle gets inside the body of amoeba and is covered in a covering. This is because this covering is formed from this pseudopodia, the outer part of this pseudopodia. So this covering is your food vacuole. Okay, now once amoeba has taken food inside its body in the form of food vacuole, now this food vacuole contains digestive enzymes. So what this food vacuole do? It releases the digestive enzymes. It releases the digestive enzymes which digest the food particle. So now digestion of food particle will occur. The process of digestion by these digestive enzymes which will act on the food particle. Now what we have after digestion? After digestion, this food vacuole will burst out. Okay, it would burst open and the digested food would be absorbed by amoeba to gain energy from the food, and the leftover food, or we can say now we have food vacuole has digested. Okay, now we do not say once it gets the food digested, it bursts open and the digested food is released out in the body of amoeba which is thereby absorbed. Now the remaining food, or you can say the waste, now you have a waste vacuole, or you can say a excretory vacuole created in amoeba. Now this excretory vacuole is pushed out from the body. So now this vacuole is, or the waste, excretory vacuole means it contains the waste and your undigested food. So this waste particles and the undigested food are pushed out from the body of amoeba, and hence this is the process of nutrition in amoeba. And amoeba, you all know, is your unicellular organism. Now one more example which is given in your books of another unicellular organism is about paramecium. So paramecium is again a unicellular organism. It is somewhat elongated, it has an elongated structure, and this paramecium, it has many finger-like projections. That is, if let's suppose this is a paramecium, then it contains various hair-like structures on the surface of this body which are known as cilia. So what does this cilia do? This cilia moves and in turn it takes up or pushes all the food particle near to the body of paramecium, and then this paramecium obtains its food. So this was nutrition in unicellular organism. In detail you have been given about amoeba. So now you can write in theoretical also that the first step would be what? Absorption, moving of amoeba towards the food particle. The next is formation of pseudopodia to entrap the food particle. Next is absorption of food or taking in of food particle in the body of amoeba and creation of food vacuole. The next would be the food vacuole contains various digestive enzymes which work on this food particle and breaks it down into simpler forms. Now the food vacuole bursts open and all the digested food is released by this, is absorbed by the body of amoeba, and the remaining waste or undigested food is hence converted into a excretory vacuole, and at last this excretory vacuole is pushed out from the organisms, that is amoeba's body. And next you can have of paramecium, that is how paramecium obtains its food. So now we have dealt with photosynthesis, then we have dealt with stomata, and we have dealt with nutrition in simpler organisms. So our next topic for this class would be nutrition in humans. So the type of nutrition shown by humans is heterotrophic. We all know heterotrophic means we are dependent on others for getting our food. We are dependent on other plants and animals. So the mode of nutrition in humans would be heterotrophic, and humans could be called as omnivores because they feed on animal and plants both. Now next what we have is, basically now you have to study how the food from wherever sources you are getting any food, how this food is digested into your body. So we are dealing with the digestive system in humans. Okay, we have digestive system in humans. Now see, you can see the digestive system diagram which is given in your books, and I hope itna to you all know how a digestive system looks like, because you are studying this digestive system from very basic classes, junior classes. So digestive system of humans, why do we need a digestive system? If I ask you, can you answer? What is the actual need of this digestive system? Because whatever food particle you are taking, it is in the form of complex substances. So you can have many purpose, or the answer to why do you actually need a digestive system. The first one, which you can say that the food which we eat is in the form of large particles or large pieces. We need to break down these large pieces into smaller pieces. So we need that the large particles of our food, okay, this large I am telling you on the basis of size. So we need that these large particles present in the food should be broken down into smaller particles. And in our digestive system, in our mouth, we have teeth, and teeth do the similar function, that is they break the larger pieces of food into smaller bits. So this is done by teeth. Can you think of any other next function? Then we can say that the food is present in the form of complex material. This complex here, I mean based on its chemical composition, okay? That food contains large macromolecules and large chemical compounds, and these complex material cannot be absorbed by body. So we need to break down these complex materials into simpler forms. Why we need simpler forms? Because these simpler forms can be absorbed easily by our body. And when these simpler forms would be absorbed by our body, then only we can get energy from the food. So this process of breaking down the complex materials into simpler forms is carried out by enzymes. The enzymes present in our body work on these complex materials to convert them into the simpler forms, and hence these enzymes are also called biocatalysts. Catalyst because they make a chemical reaction to occur, breaking of complex into simple forms, and biocatalyst because these are present in the living beings. So hence enzymes are called biocatalyst. Then you can have many more importance of your digestive system. So this is the basic introduction, that is why do we actually need a digestive system. Now next we'll study about the parts of digestive system. So first part would be your mouth. And then what is the function of mouth? Mouth helps in the ingestion of food, okay? Ingestion means intake of food. Through your hand, you take your food inside your mouth. So it is the entry point of your food. So mouth, this helps in ingestion of food. And ingestion means intake of food. Now, after the mouth is the opening from where you put your food inside. Then you have your buccal cavity. After mouth, the next part would be buccal cavity. So this buccal cavity contains teeth, it contains tongue, okay, and it contains several glands, that is salivary glands. Please do see, as I am explaining you different parts, do see their structural diagram, okay, in your books. A very neat, clear diagram of digestive system in humans is present in your books. So then you have your buccal cavity after the mouth, and this buccal cavity contains teeth. Then you have your tongue, and then you have some glands, that is salivary glands, present in the mouth. So we will be discussing one by one the different parts of our digestive system, human digestive system, and this human digestive system can be called as your alimentary canal. Okay, so these we are discussing the parts of alimentary canal, and particularly about humans. Alimentary canal, the canal which starts from, it is a digestive tract or a tube-like structure which starts from your mouth and ends up to the anus. So this is what you have your alimentary canal in humans, and these are the different parts which are present in alimentary canal. That is, somewhere the alimentary canal is very thin and somewhere it becomes very widens up or very thicker in shape. So first one was your mouth. It helps in ingestion of food, that is intake of food. The next one is your buccal cavity. Buccal cavity contains teeth, tongue and salivary glands. You all know that what is the function of teeth? These teeth help in grinding the food. Okay, the teeth help in grinding food. Grinding means whenever you bite the food with the help of your teeth, the food which is present in larger pieces becomes converted into smaller bits. That is the conversion of large food particles into small particles. So this is the function of teeth. Then if you know, you have 4 kinds of teeth, that is incisors, canines, premolar, molar. Okay, this is not given in your books, but this is a basic knowledge which I want you to have, that you have 4 kinds of teeth and in an adult, that is incisors, canines, premolar, molars, and the function of every teeth you will study in your higher classes. So no need to get in detail. Then teeth can also be categorized into 2 different parts, that is milk teeth which are present in babies, and then you have your permanent teeth. These are also called temporary teeth because after a few months or years they break off, and then you get the teeth which are called permanent. And if these permanent teeth break off, then you do not get any new teeth. Okay. So after the teeth, the next is your tongue. Tongue is a muscular organ, and this tongue helps in mastication of food. Function of the tongue: masticate, that is mastication of food. What do you mean by mastication of food? The food particle which was broken down by the teeth into small particles. Now what does this tongue do? This tongue rolls up the particles. These smaller particles are rolled up in the form of a sphere or a ball, and this is done by the tongue. With the help of, how does this tongue helps in the mastication of food? With the help of saliva. Function is to masticate the food with the help of saliva. Okay, that is what the teeth converted your large food particles into smaller food particles. These smaller food particles, with the help of saliva and tongue, they convert into a spherical round form, that is a very smooth form, a ball-like structure. So you can also add that another function would be, teeth is breaking down. This is absorption which is done by the biocatalyst, and the next one would be what? Which we discussed just recently, that is the mastication of food. to make the food is converted into a smooth foam. Then you can ask, why does the food is required to be converted to a smooth foam? Because our alimentary canal is a muscular organ. That is, it is made up of muscles, and because it is made up of muscles, it is very soft. So to prevent any injury due to these food particles, they need to be converted into a smooth foam. Okay, so this can again be a significance or importance, that why do we need a perfect digestive system in humans. So we have discussed the function of food. I hope this is function of tongue. I hope it is clear. It has the function for mastication of food. Mastication means to convert your food into a smooth ball-like foam. Okay, and this is done with the help of saliva. Then it also helps in proper mixing of food. Proper mixing of food with your saliva. Then next comes salivary glands. So what is the function of these glands? Where are they present? So these salivary glands are present at the inner region of your cheeks. This is your cheek. So at the inner side you have these salivary glands. So these are present at inner side of cheek. Okay. Then what is the function of these salivary glands? They have the function to secrete saliva. So this is the function, that is, they secrete saliva and they are located at the inner regions of our cheek. Now we will be dealing with what is the function of saliva then. Then this saliva, it contains an enzyme which is called as salivary amylase. Okay, this contains an enzyme called salivary amylase. The other name given to this enzyme is also ptyalin. So this enzyme, salivary amylase, what it does is, it converts your starch present in the food to the simple sugars. Starch is a complex molecule. So we said that in digestion, all the complex molecule, complex means bigger chemical compounds, are transformed or converted into simple, smaller chemical compounds. So this starch, which was your complex chemical compound, is converted into simple sugars by the action of which enzyme? We said that for this conversion of complex into simple, we require different enzymes. So the enzymes needed here is salivary amylase. So please remember the name of the enzyme and its function. That is, this enzyme is secreted by saliva. This enzyme converts your starch into sugar, that is your complex starch molecules into simple sugar molecules. So we have till now discussed two parts, that is mouth and buccal cavity. So now the third part which we have, the third part would be your esophagus. This esophagus is also known as food pipe. So this is a long elongated structure. Remember, no kind of digestion. We had our first digestion in our mouth. So the first step of digestion occurs in the mouth, that is conversion of starch into sugars. Then esophagus is just a transporting system, that it transport your food from the mouth to stomach. So esophagus is just a food pipe or a transporting structure. No kind of digestion occurs in esophagus. Okay, the important thing related to esophagus is peristalsis movement. Then what is this peristalsis movement? If I ask you, esophagus is a muscular tube-like structure to transport the food from the upper part to the lower part. This muscular structure undergoes expansion and relaxation, okay? Because this is made up of muscles, so it would undergo contraction and relaxation. So when the food is present in esophagus, Then it contracts from the above part and relaxes. So the food is pushed down. Then the above part would expand and the lower part would contract. So this contraction and relaxation movement is called peristalsis movement. So peristalsis movement is the movement of muscles, movement exhibited by, it is the movement shown by muscles of your esophagus or food pipe, where the muscles undergo simultaneous contraction and relaxation. Okay, so this, what do you understand by the term peristalsis movement? That is, esophagus is generally present in this manner. Okay, from the mouth buccal cavity, this is your food pipe. Now when the food comes here in the esophagus, to push it downwards, what does esophagus do? Esophagus would get contracted and the lower regions would get expanded. So the food particle would be pushed down. And once the food particle is pushed down, this movement which contracted, it again expands and the lower region now contracts. And in this way, because of repeated contraction and relaxation, your food particle moves down. So this is the function of the third part of alimentary canal, that is esophagus or food pipe. Now the next is stomach. So stomach is a bag-like structure, or you can say a wide part of alimentary canal. Okay, it is a bag-like structure. Now as soon as the food reaches your stomach, then stomach secretes, stomach contains three things. Three important things which you should remember about stomach is what? It contains hydrochloric acid, that is HCl. Then it contains an enzyme which is called pepsin. And third thing which is present in is the mucus. So we'll see the functions of these. The function of HCl is to provide an acidic medium, because this acidic medium is responsible for the activation of your pepsin enzyme. So HCl provides an acidic medium which activates this pepsin enzyme. And the function of pepsin enzyme is to digest proteins. Okay, it helps in the partial digestion of proteins. Next you have HCl serves two functions. Firstly, it provides an acidic medium for activation, and then next is what? It kills the microbes present in your food, which can cause diseases to you. Then this enzyme, what you have, pepsin, it helps in the digestion of proteins, but remember, proteins are partially digested here. And the last you have mucus. Mucus prevents the walls of stomach from the action of HCl. If mucus would be absent, then HCl would cause a burning sensation, which is also called acidity disease. Okay, so this is an account of stomach. Now we'll be dealing with other organs in your next class. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you for joining the class today.